Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. I've got a really exciting guest in today, and Denis Laviolette. I've been looking forward to this conversation for some time now. Denny has had quite a exciting career. He's one of the founders of Newfound Gold, which has a spectacular high grade gold project out in Newfoundland. He is one of the hosts of the Crash Labs podcast, advocating for the industry with great guests such as recently Pierre Lassonde, one of my heroes, Rob McEwen, another of my heroes, Eric Sprott, another of my heroes. Plus, he's done great work with artificial intelligence, which kind of is part of the genesis of Earth Labs, who has great stuff on their plate with their media empire in the building. And so, Denny, thank you very much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Alan. The pleasure's all mine. I've been following you as well, and a big thanks for all the work you do in covering the space and being a voice of integrity out here in the mining sphere, which I think we need more of. And anyway, the pleasure's all mine. So thank you very much.
Well, that's very kind words of you, and you kind of hit on why I do my shows, Denny. I think this industry needs more good coverage. I'm a rock hound that I've been in the business for 30 years of exploration. I have all the scars that you can't see from those 3 decades in the business. And I love being an advocate. I'm an enthusiastic guy about the metals and searching for buried treasures with the truth machine. So
That's it.
I think we
Treasure
got a
hunting.
lot in common.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, treasure hunting, that's what I've distilled it down recently into like what gets me so excited about the space and the media side of it. I never in my wildest imaginations thought this would be something or an aspect of the business that I'd be drawn to. But it's because I'm drawn to the treasure hunts and I want to see them all. I want to be feel like I'm part of them all. You know what I mean? It's a weird, anyway, insatiable appetite, I guess, for discovery.
Well, sometimes, Denny, I don't know if our industry does a really great job of sort of showcasing what we do, which is at the end of the day, the truth machine, the drilling is the cornerstone of everything in mining, from the big miners to the developers to the explorers. And we're really in the treasure hunting business.
We very much are in the treasure hunting business, and I agree with you. I don't think we're doing a good enough job shining a light and captivating people on that treasure hunt. And so, like oftentimes with the structure of public disclosure, with this structure sort of the framework that we all give and receive news in the space, it's like it's always after the fact, right? Like, there is some degree of buildup. Like, for instance, I can say, we've just commensurated our commenced our first inaugural drill program on target X, Y, and Z. That'd be the, let's say, first press release, maybe some color on what makes X, Y, and Z attractive, a kind word from the CEO, like very enthusiastic to be working with fucking whatever. Oh, sorry, can I swear on this or
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
if
yeah.
not, I can't.
We're new media, baby. We can do whatever we want.
We can fart and swear on here.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, all right, that's good. So anyway, no, I think sort of the CEO come in with a well-crafted comment, and you're done. And then all of a sudden, months go by, investors are in the dark, right? They're hoping, wondering what's going on. The CEOs on the issuer side, they're working with their teams. There's actually a ton going on. There's, rigs breaking down. There's trucks getting stuck in the mud. There's drilling and where's the vein and flip it around. Let's try this way. And then all of a sudden, so all of that cool excitement gets washed out. And then you end up with this results, pleased to announce the results from our inaugural, program, da 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 da. That's it. And so it's kind of like running through. Imagine like there was a book. You get to read the preamble, and then all of a sudden you read the conclusion at the end, like the final chapter. The protagonist gets killed, and the bad guy is win, whatever it may be. And it's kind of like, well, Jesus, that's the part of this industry that for me is the most exciting part. And it's a spend money business, so it's not really a business. It's just like, people are literally buying lottery tickets to embark on this adventure. And we imagine like betting on horses and not watching the races. It's almost like that.
Well, I grew up
Not
on a
getting to
racehorse farm, and I've been betting on the races since I was a kid, so I like to watch them. And you
totally.
you said something there that really strikes a chord with me. And you talked about the process. And I think that sometimes our industry is stuck in the old ways, and they kind of do that. They introduce the story, then the conclusion, or halfway through the book. What do you think about why aren't these companies doing a better job to bring the audience into the process of treasure hunting? For example, you get a nice looking drill core. And, there's an old debate in the industry. Should we show it? Should we not show it? Well, we'll
Sure.
create expectations, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, the shareholders that funded that project, they've kind of paid for that core. And I think it kind of insults them to a degree not to show them. And I think it does a disservice to kind of leave them in the dark. There's no promises of what's in the core in the assays, but hey, you hit a nice, you hit a nice quartz vein or a orogenic gold vein or an epithermal vein or beautiful looking sulfides. Why aren't we showing that more?
Yeah, I think the regulatory side of it with, the IROCs and the what you can and cannot say. I think there's obviously some fear around people saying, well, I don't want to step in a booby trap, say something I can't, or call it something that I shouldn't be calling it. There's like no touch words. Like you can't say deposit, we're
Right.
until it's actually
Or,
quantified.
or,
You
or,
can't say or,
yeah.
or you can't. So you can't say spectacular or this looks really, you have to be very careful with certain language and words you
But
use.
Denny, if I'm drilling for an orogenic gold vein and I hit the vein, I'm not promising anybody what is going to come out of the assay results, but I hit what I'm looking for.
Sure, I had a big juicy looking vein. Like who knows what it's going to be, guys? Hang on tight. Couple more weeks, we'll get the numbers. Stay tuned. I totally think people should do it. What's the reason why people haven't? And I think it's actually like not it's not that like everyone sucks at their job and they're not smart enough to figure this out. I think what it has been historically has been that like if you wanted to do that, the methodology, like let's go back to an extreme. Let's go back to like 2003 or 2005. The internet's a budding thing. WordPress. You've got press releases now. Digital emails is kind of the methodology. Videos are clunky. Most people have dial-up internet. Cameras have, those file sizes are too big to transfer and upload, and fucking the list goes on, right?
Yep.
And so I think technology has played a huge role in limiting our ability to be able to do that. But today's a different time. You've
Yes.
got GoPros, you've got gimbals, photo editing software, video editing software. I mean, I know I've got buddies that figured it out how to do it on their own, watching a few YouTube videos, going on Amazon, buying like even this podcast. We don't have podcast experience. We didn't know what we were doing. But we went out, we watched some videos, we learned okay, these microphones pretty good. Obviously learned from others. And turns out it's pretty easy to do. And so like I think now with all of these things being readily available, we should totally be switching up our act and saying, "Hey, listen, let's get, give the crew in the field a camera. Give them, give them a couple of cameras and tell them to shoot shit. Tell them to shoot random things that happen throughout the day, and then hand that over. Well, you can edit that in like, sure, you might get 2 hours of footage, and you can parse that down into like 2 minutes, and then boom, put it out. It's not that much work. It's not that hard to do, and that's something we're trying with Kirkland Discoveries, by the way. So
Oh,
so if you check out Kirkland Discoveries Treasure Hunters,
oh
Steph
yeah, I've seen,
has been
yeah.
doing a fantastic job of it. So it's every week. We've been shooting the videos on site. Everyone's got cameras. We stitch it together, edit it, and put it out. Some weeks are boring weeks. Some weeks are, but what's cool about that is you get to talk, like for instance, in the fall, we had to spend some flow through, and we had generated this brand new beautiful target that we still needed our permit and our access and figure out some of the finer things. We were going to get that in the spring, but spring's too late. So we had to drill what we actually already had sort of permitted and ready to go to drill. And there were sort of like priority B, priority C type targets. And we had a few $100,000 burning a hole in our pocket. And that was for us, these were worthwhile things to investigate. We knew they likely wouldn't be, manifesting something crazy, but they could. And so let's give them a crack. So we're talking about those targets, but we're also talking about our anticipation of our other big targets. So it's like to say, hey guys, we're giving this stuff a shot. It's not the be all end all. Looking pretty good. We'll see what we do. And then, you know, we've got this big thing that we really care about, and we're hopefully going to get that first thing in the spring. So what ended up happening was those targets didn't really pan out. But if you would have imagined our communication going back to the sort of old way, we would have said, hey, we're drilling these targets. Everyone thought, okay, those must be their best targets, I guess. And then we come up with dusters, and they go, well,
You killed it.
everything else is. So there's a real added value to bringing people along that journey. And if you think that doesn't matter, think about like, for the listener that thinks like Denny's talking out his ass, think about like Gold Rush Alaska,
Yep.
that show, right?
Hugely popular.
Beaton's Creek and fucking,
Yeah.
da da da, Schnabel and this guy and Todd and the gang. And every season they're going, oh, there's a pay streak down there somewhere. Oh, we just missed it. But next season we're gonna get it.
Yeah.
And everyone's okay with it, man. Hey, shit, these guys shit the bed this season, but yes, it's next season. They're really gonna kill it. And so, like, that's sort of the exploration industries like that. As geologists, as
Totally.
prospectors, you get a lot of false positives. You get a lot of like letdowns and you get a lot of surprises. And it's like, it's okay to bring people through that. It's okay to not know everything and
I
pretend
agree.
like you got it all mapped out.
I 100% agree. I kind of think of it, I've written about what I called, the mining needs to go from the fax machine era to the digital marketing world. And, I see other things, like, for example, Denny, geologists can make things really complicated. And I've worked with some really fantastic mentors in geology, geochemistry, geophysics. And what I always found about those guys and those people, and also in other endeavors in my life, is really brilliant people have a skill at breaking everything down so everybody can hear. I think Albert Einstein calls that the definition of genius. And for example, you can talk about an orogenic gold system, you can talk about, crustal faults, and, really what are they? They're cracks in the earth. The,
That's it.
the fluids that carry the gold follow those cracks in the earth. Then they find other cracks in the earth. And, you look at geochemistry, for example. I spent a lot of my career in diamond exploration, and we use diamond indicator minerals
Yeah, like
for
garnets and this and
garnets.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, sort of, and you can make that really complicated, and I have because I co-wrote, authored a paper, peer-reviewed paper on indicator minerals and exploration. You can make it really complicated, but you can also say that you're using those diamond indicator minerals as breadcrumbs to lead you to the kimberlite that is where they came from. Uh,
Yep.
Geophysics, you can make that really complicated, or you can sort of say, well, here's what's going on around, and here's what anomaly. What do you think about those thoughts as far as breaking it down so investors that aren't geologists can understand this stuff too?
Completely agree. I think we put a lot of weight on complicated words. Now, I will say there is a subset of capital that
Yes,
feels like they're really smart capital, and
yes.
they feel like they need to be word saladed and bamboozled by the wordsmithing and the intelligence being projected onto them by the geologist on the opposite end of the table. And if that's not there, then this guy must be a dummy, and this isn't worth rolling the dice on. And so that's kind of the shitty part of it, and that I noticed real early. But you're hitting on a really valuable piece. Now, when you think about this practically and look out the other way, and you say, okay, well, if let's say financial success is some measure of I don't know of intelligent, I guess, I don't know, exploration talent, I don't know, let's say,
Wisdom.
some measure of like actual, know-how.
Yes.
Okay, so if you look around in the mining sphere, there's probably more successful and wealthy people with less degrees and letters beside their name than than the opposite, right? So it's not like you see the most wealthy people in this sphere of exploration having all of these PhDs and master's degrees in geology, leading these companies to success and then financially benefiting.
Look at Murray
Oftentimes,
Pesum.
sure, Murray Peasant. Look at Sean Ryan, right? There's like the list goes absolutely on and on and on. And it's because it's not this isn't rocket science. It's fucking easy business in a way. It's a like go back to your kimberlites. I could take, a handful of friends and say, "Listen guys, here's some stuff. There's some these minerals and this is what they look like. The glaciers and the glaciation was a big snowplow and scratched off the tops of these kimberlite things, these pipes that we're looking for, and scratched them and smeared all this shit everywhere for kilometers and kilometers. We're going to go and try to follow the breadcrumbs back to where these pipes are. And these are the breadcrumbs. This is what they look like. And if you use this little gun here and this little gadget there, you can tell if it's that or not that."
Yep.
It's like that's why prospectors can be successful because they don't need a degree. They like those models are not that sophisticated. I'm not downplaying the complications and the sophistication of like, the science of kimberlites or lamprolites and all these other, forms. All these things you can go down the rabbit hole as far as you want, but in terms of practical exploration, you don't need a PhD in that to be able to be good at it.
No. Where that all generates from, Denny, is I'm First Nations. And my great grandfather, he had a trap line for 30 years or for 60 years. And he walked that trap line every day. And had you have gone to him and said, "Hey, have you ever seen a piece of rock like this?" He would take you to the precise spot, even if he went there 30 years ago. And I kind of have a passion for,
Totally.
that old-fashioned geology of walking around and looking down and looking for things that are different than everything else around it. And I think that's the nature of this business at the end of the day. We're treasure hunters walking around looking down.
Looking for rusty rocks. We're
Exactly.
looking for we're looking for fucked up looking rusty rocks that are kind of weird. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's it. And then you smash some samples. But I completely agree. So one of these people, Alan Keats. I don't know if you know of Alan or have heard of
Yeah,
Alan
from
Keats. Alan Keats in Newfoundland.
Newfoundland. The
Yeah,
Keats family. Yeah, of course.
exactly. So Alan's is the top. He's the old man, right? He's a beauty. Also First Nations.
Oh, okay.
Just happens to be. So Alan's father was a prospector, And this is back at like the turn of the century. And so Allan grew up in a prospecting family, and he'd go out with his dad, and Allan's probably pushing. I'm sorry, Allan, if you're listening. He's probably in his 70s, I'd say. Maybe he's 80.
Hey, there's
Um,
worse things, Denny. You could be 6 feet under instead of 70 some.
Yeah, but he's a goddamn beauty, this guy, and he's a rare breed. And when I first went out there, so I went out there, and I was very interested in that region for a variety of reasons. I had seen all the historic kind of numbers and stuff. I hadn't met the guy, but I had seen like all of these, showings in the area. I'd looked at a lot of big maps and stuff like that. And I went out there, and it just so happens that this Alan Keats fella had a few of the claims that I was interested in, and he was going to be my day guide out there. So I lined up a meeting with him, and he was going to take me around and show me around. And like what you're saying is unbelievable. It's exactly Alan. I'm in his garage, and he's got a microscope in his garage. Okay. I go in, what is he doing with that? He's got a bunch of old gear in the back. He's got rocks everywhere. Rocks, data, maps, like old journals, like because he had worked for many companies, but he just sort of hoarded all this stuff.
Yeah.
And for decades and decades, Alan goes out in the bush, and he just looks around, and he goes, yeah, this came from this boulder, boy, that I was watching for, 30 years. But that year, Denny, the water level came down like about a meter, and I could get in there. And finally, I got a sample of her, and check it out. It runs this and that. And there's 8 grams gold. And so he gets all fired up, and you can just see it in his eyes. And he's going, but to your point, he knows where all the bodies are buried. He's been watching, walking. You show a guy like Alan a rock, he'll tell you where to find more of it for sure.
Yep.
And so Kevin, his son, also a beauty, and the whole family, they're all like this. And but it makes you wonder, like that whole breed of prospector is a dying breed. But if you go to, let's say, Timmins area, there's like Jack Robert and a whole pack of guys out there that are just incredible. Randy Sallow and Jack Robert, and sort of I've noticed that all of these different pockets in geographic regions kind of have these people,
Yep.
and they're really interesting to talk to.
Well, Denny, kind of what you're pointing to there is sort of an industry-wide thing. Like, if we showcase these kind of people more and promoted that kind of work, for example, with the First Nations, there's a lot of young guys out there that have eagle eyes and great memories, and, they should be out there doing old-fashioned geology. And in a lot of ways, like, I've designed my own drill programs, I've run my own drill programs, I've looked over every millimeter of rock. But at the end of the day, whether you're walking on the rock or you're drilling through the rock, what are you looking for? You're looking for what's abundant, which is your country rock. Then you're looking for alteration, where the metals bearing fluids have chemically altered the rock. So
Yep.
it looks different than the country rock. And then you're looking for like a quartz vein, and that looks different than everything else. And then you go out of it on the other side, and maybe 50 meters away, you start seeing more alteration. Oh, well, maybe I should just keep going with that drill hole and see if there's more. That's the nature of our business. It's so cool. The treasure
It
hunting
is cool.
process.
It is cool. It's like I was literally talking. I was on the train yesterday, and I was talking to a fella, young guy, and anyway, we're just shooting the shit, and I was talking to him about this, and I said, the reason I picked this business was because I came from nothing. I didn't have, my mom and dad worked hard, but we didn't, I didn't have any big connections in the space. I didn't have a big family, wealthy family, and a Kickstarter for that. Like I worked my way through university, all this kind of stuff. Like it was one of these industries where I realized quickly that you just had to you could put in some hard work and for a very small amount of money. and some hard work and time, you could find something that could be worth a fortune. It could, you could transform yourself out from like this layer of society to one that maybe, is another one. And it's sort of like Indiana Jones as a kid was something I was really fascinated in. I loved Indiana Jones. I loved just treasure hunting. When I was a kid, I stole rocks from my neighbor's gardens and I sold them at the end. Like, like some kids had lemonade stands. I had these rocks from gardens. And I remember like I was charging like 50 cents or 25 cents for a rock. And like, I remember this lady, she was a neighbor around the block and she comes by and she goes, well, these are from my garden. And I go, well, they're $2. And she goes, $2. She goes, you took these out of my garden. I've got to pay you $2 to get my rock. I was like 7 years old, I'm going, yeah, like pony up, lady. Like they'll be back here tomorrow if you don't have the money today.
You
So,
should, you
anyways,
should, you
but I
should have
just
been a kid down where I live now, which is in Zacatecas, Mexico.
I love Zacatecas.
I'm telling you, Denny,
Cool.
everywhere you go, you look down. Oh, there's a quartz. Oh, there's a quartz. Oh, there's some amethyst over there. Oh, wow! Everywhere you go in the
It's
state,
wild.
you
It's
walk
wild.
around, look down, and you literally can see outcropping, weathered epithermal veins coming right out of the ground. You look at the mountains and you see where some rocks have moved and it's exposed an epithermal vein, and you can see them from like miles away.
Well, there's a massive caldera there, and actually a couple of them. And well, just between there and Durango, right? Like,
Yes,
and then
actually all the way from Zacatecas, Fresnillo,
yeah.
Durango, where Vizsla has their great discovery, all the way to the ocean in Mazatlan.
Yeah, yeah, so cool. And then and you're up at one of these like higher points, and you can see all the head frames and all the old like all the mining, like the footprint of what's going. That's a pretty impressive area.
Yeah,
Very, very impressive from that perspective.
I love being here, Danny. I came down here like 9 years ago for a property visit. And I could see all the veins everywhere, and every project I looked at, I drove on a road that had power right beside it, and you could literally jump out of the truck and like 200 meters away is where you're going to put a drill hole. Coming from Canada where I spent 20 some years, we had to go on helicopter. We had to fly and go on helicopters to a remote
Totally.
area. You
Well, and
know,
there you've got like a UNESCO, you got like a UNESCO aqueduct, which looks awesome. The city's unbelievably beautiful. Then
oh,
there's all this like you come in off the highway. There's like a big Walmart and a Home Depot and a whatever. Like you got all the things. It's like this is a great place to be.
and they
That's
love
I love
miners down
Zacatecas
here.
actually.
They got statues of miners, and you know,
Oh hell
I,
yeah,
one of my mentors and friends is Andre Gumond, and
I like Andre.
I had the pleasure of spending time with him, and he gave me a pretty nice compliment one year at the PDAC. He was doing a talk, and I came in a little bit late, and he stopped his talk when I walked in the room. He said, there's one of the greatest advocates for my Virginia. Thank you very much for coming, Allan." And oh my God, thanks, Andre. But one thing I asked Andre one time is, Andre, why have you spent all your career in the James Bay lowlands? You never went anywhere else. He said, well, Allan, I looked at the geology, I looked at how underexplored it was, and one day a long time ago, I came to the conclusion that I could spend the rest of my career in the James Bay lowlands. So after I came to Zacatecas and fell in love with the place, I sent Andre a message and I said, Andre, I found my James Bay lowlands.
Oh, it's
Uh,
fantastic.
yeah.
Fantastic, Alan. Honestly, I was there for a while. I was there for maybe a week in Zacatecas. Um, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it left a mark on me too. I really thought, I said, this is a place I could be. I really liked it. It's got a good energy to it. for as an explorationist. Yeah, you can fill your boots there forever. So that's
Yeah.
very cool. Yeah.
Well, and from here, I do my shows, and because of this wonderful internet and the digital marketing tools, you can be in Toronto, I can be in Vancouver or in Zacatecas, Mexico, and it's like we're at a boardroom talking rocks together.
What a world.
It is. Now, I want to get to your Newfound Gold, where you were the one of the founders. And you did a lot of great geological sleuthing to sort of put some of the pieces of the puzzle back together. How, one, this is an orogenic gold prospective region, that at one time it was connected to Ireland, and we had the Dalradian discovery over there, of which I was happy to have picked that company at 25 cents and follow it right through to the takeover. But you kind of put the pieces of the puzzle back together, geologically speaking,
Yeah.
and realize that, hey, this could be another Abitibi kind of region, and it's underexplored. And let's fill up our boots here.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want me to comment on it, or
Of
like sort of take you
course.
take you through it? Yeah. So I mean, it was interesting. It sort of all sparked for me. I think I want to say back in 2013. Um, no, actually earlier than that. 2011.
Holy.
So 2011, I was in Ghana, and I've never told this story publicly. I've told it to him, so he
Mute
knows it.
exclusive for Rocks and Stocks News.
Yeah, yeah, this is a funny story. So, anyways, Michael Hendrickson. I don't know if you know that name.
Yeah, I do. Why do I
S-
know that name?
So he's in charge of Goldshore right now. He used to be with Ivan Bevic and running all of the Orion kind of Ivan Bevic's group of gold things.
Okay.
And he's
That's
ex
why I know it.
he's ex Newmont. So I had a project in West Africa with a company called Extra Gold. I'm still the director on the board of Extra Gold.
Okay.
And this may be talking out of school, and I hope it's not. So sorry, Jim, if I get anybody in shit. Um, but we had a lot of tire kickers once upon a time at Extra. And back in 2011, and this was the height of the market, and we were making a pretty big discovery in Ghana. And it was a virgin discovery. So myself and Yves Clement, and we're looking at the Atiwa Range. It's basically Ghana's got effectively four major greenstone belts, and three of which have gotten tons of love.
For
And
the
then there's this,
non-geologists out there, folks, greenstone belts are very old rocks,
yeah,
and a lot of, well, the Abitibi,
exactly.
Red Lake, all over the world, you need these very old rocks, and that's what greenstone belts are.
Right. And so there's this big one that's very famous around the world called the Ashanti Belt,
Of
right? And that's
course.
where Anglo-Ashanti gets its name. And it's a very old Snarkian greenstone belt, and host to many, many deposits, and has produced, probably north of, I don't even know the number, like north of 100 million
Probably
ounces
a
of gold.
couple hundred
Probably.
million
Yeah.
ounces have come
Yeah.
from
It's
there
crazy,
over
right?
time. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's been, I mean, mined forever, centuries, right?
Yep.
So this Kibi Winneba belt is kind of like a half truncated little poor redheaded orphan cousin down to the south. And so even I was actually mining alluvial, so I was a placer miner.
Holy moly.
Yeah, so
Lord
I had
knows.
like yeah, so I've got a special sweet spot in my heart for Gold Rush, Alaska, because I did that. So anyways, I was placer mining down in the south. This company had these claims. Anyway, I don't have to go back through the inception of the whole thing, but we were making a big discovery. It was awesome, and we were getting a ton of tire kickers, people flying around, and Newmont was our closest neighbor to the north.
Okay.
So Michael Hendrickson was their top guy. He was like their top structural nerd, uh, guru, and he was the guy that they were sending around. And so we were on the routine, check up, check in project in your vicinity. Hey, saw that hole. We hit like 100 meters of 4.5 grams. Okay, like Michael's coming to site. And so we got to spend some time with Michael, quite a bit. And then, of course, you're going out in the field, you're looking and showing and telling and laying out the core and going through all the goodies. But then there's beer o'clock, right? Where we're sitting around, we're having supper, we're shooting the shit, and et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, Mike's telling me a lot about technology and some of the approach at Newmont about filtering in and honing in on opportunities around the world. And he's a tremendous structural geologist, tremendous scientist in general, but just a smart guy. And Mike goes, he goes, yeah, he goes, like one of the most fascinating, I think, fronts that we need to explore and this is something that's kind of interesting at Newmont and particularly in my group, is we're looking at jurisdictions where you have well-known suture zones. So basically continental collision margins.
Yep.
You have these beautiful zones. And this is where, for the listener, pieces of crust have crashed together and glued together.
Thank you.
So, if you track these from known jurisdictions where there's mineralization, you'll find that these things span, continents, and you'll find other jurisdictions where they are completely underexplored or unexplored or whatever. And so that was the idea. And that stuck with me. And anyway, I had my pine tree experience. I joined the capital market side after Extra. I'd, done that. And I was thinking about it. And I saw this map that was produced. This is around the time of like Dalradian
Yep.
and if you go back to sort of Dalradian and Remarco. So Remarco had that big
Down in
discovery
Virginia or
in
somewhere.
the
Yeah.
Carolinas,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Carolinas. Yeah. Sorry.
they had sold to Oceania.
Actually, I
And
covered
so
both those companies in my reports.
exactly. So the structure that glues them all together is the Iapetus suture zone, right? And it rips right through into Newfoundland. And then so I thought, well, this is funny. So it turned out Newfoundland had this phenomenal online database where you could actually look. It's called it's good. Yeah, geez, I forget the name of it. Newfoundland Geo Atlas. And so you can type in Newfoundland Geo Atlas and you can turn on all the gold occurrences and whatever, and it's pretty good. And so I'm zooming into that. I'm like, well, there's a suture, and there's like almost no claims, and there's all these gold occurrences, and you can click on the gold occurrences, and there's links to who's got them and who did what, and so it's Noranda. I'm looking, it's old, and then the Keats guys had some claims up on the north side of the Gander River and the Quinlans, and there's a hodgepodge, actually, a mosaic of like small prospectors that had little bits and pieces. And so anyway, so that kind of stuck with me. Pine Tree went under. I wanted to do my own thing. I talked to Sheldon, talked to Colin, and it was about trying to get something going. And I said, okay, Colin was really interested in Nevada. Okay, we can play down there. I don't know Nevada well, but I know some friends, and we'll figure out Nevada. I knew Kirkland Lake area, and I knew this Newfoundland thing was kind of like the real back pocket trick here in all this was I was excited about that. So anyways, met up with these guys, went to Newfoundland. We put our monies together, started the company. I went out there and met with Allan and some of the other prospectors. Was able to hack out a deal pretty quickly and glue that together. But I realized like we had to do a lot more staking because there's a way bigger picture here. There's an entire district here
Right.
with like a fingerprints of gold along this massive suture. And it wasn't until I actually
So the
got in there
gold
and
occurrence first brought you there and the structural story. Am I getting that right?
100%, that was
Okay.
it.
Okay.
And then when I talked to what got me even more excited was I talked to a lot of the geos, like fellows like Peter Dimmel and some of the more kind of astute geological authorities within the area that had worked this project, even going back to Noranda days. And I realized that, like, their sort of appraisal of what this was all about, like they were saying, well, it's very much like Nevada. And, some geologists even think this is maybe epithermal. And I'm going, fucking epithermal. This is a goddamn big fucking crack with gold in it. It's
Old
100%.
rocks and
This is as orogenic gets. And in this linear and that linear. And they're fucking, I'm going, Jesus, I don't want to make a Newfie joke here, But I'm going, I'm not like a brilliant geologist, but by any stretch, but I'm going, okay, this is like, I don't think it's been looked at properly, to say it politely.
Yeah.
And so that got me more excited. Got those claims all stitched together, figured out by then gold spot was a thing and data science and taking more of a data driven approach was a thing. So I was like, okay, well, we got to do a lot of geophysics and all this kind of stuff. And I want to layer it all up and try to figure out what's going on. Um, all of a sudden, I wake up one morning after sort of stitching together the core of my ground patch and doing some staking. And I'm doing this very methodically because we don't have a lot of money. So it's like I'm picking away, doing some prospecting with the boys, and then picking away, getting some claims, going down, doing the same thing. I'm sort of tracing this out and saying, okay, here's the Appleton, here's the JBB fault. I got to trace both of these things and bolt claims on. And so I'm slowly and sort of methodically doing that. And suddenly wake up one morning and my phone's ringing off the hook. It's Allan, it's Kevin, it's all these guys calling me. And I pick up the phone and they're going, did you just see what's going on? And I turned on the system and Sean Ryan had staked from my northern contact, my northern border, all the way up on the Iapetus, almost to the coast.
Okay. So he
And I
went
went,
north on the Appleton.
oh, north, straight north. And he took
Okay.
it all.
Yeah.
And which would have been today like labs ground, exploits ground, all these guys. So that was all one big land package. He had took it basically from my north border all the way straight up to the coast. And I went, oh
Holy
fuck.
moly. Okay.
And I knew who Ryan was. And I went, Jesus Christ. I go, what this is it? I go, I thought he was supposed to be in the Yukon, this guy. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden and I'm quietly doing my thing. And so I'm freaking out. Some of these guys are Sean Ryan fanboys, like the prospectors, because he's like the god of prospecting for
Yeah.
these guys. And so like they're all excited about it. So then I'm going, well, what the hell's going on? What are they doing? So then I go, well, shit. So I talked to Colin and Sheldon. I go, boys, this is like game on. We got to get the south. Like he got the north part, but I'm gonna take the whole south part. Like that's it. And it's gonna cost us like 300 grand to stake this. So we got to pony up. So we did that, staked the whole south. Um, then okay, it's on. And I go, well, what are they gonna do? I've reached out, no answer. Da da da. Well, not a week later, or maybe it was 2 weeks later, announcement comes out. Um, Torque Minerals. I get this presentation through my trap line,
Yeah.
right? And it's a company called Torque Minerals, and Torque had optioned all of these claims from Sean Ryan, right? This entire belt, and was raising, I think it was 17 million, right? At a
Oh,
$40 million valuation.
holy moly.
And I said, who the fuck are these guys? And I'm looking, and it's Ivan Bevic, and lo and behold, Michael Hendrickson, the guy from
Oh my
Ghana,
gosh.
that fucking guy. And I'm going, what? And so,
Dumont guy.
holy, I'm going, holy shit. And so, anyway, so that's how that was like the conviction. And then it just kind of kept going from there. We ended up meeting. And so I went to Vancouver. I met with Mike and he was pissed off that we had what we had because he started approaching all the prospectors individually to see if they could but it was too late. Like I had already been there for a good year and a half
Okay.
gluing it all together. So anyway, it was just a timing thing. It was like a bizarre small world,
You know,
let's go.
that
And
is, we have an industry full of stories like that. For example, back in the 2000s, I was part of a exploration for diamonds in just outside of Yellowknife.
mhm.
And we drilled into a kimberlite and it looked really good. It had coarse grained indicator minerals. This is representative of a kimberlite that has good carrying capacity. If it can bring up a bunch of indicator minerals, if there's diamonds there, it can do the same. So, like this happened a couple weeks before the PDAC. So I said, we got to bring that core to the PDAC. So we did. And like, I think it was 2 days before the PDAC, and and diamonds were doing really good back then. And, we ended up becoming the talk of the show. And we weren't even in the main part of the conference. We were over in the,
You're out.
because that
Nice.
was the only booth we could get, right?
I,
So,
I think I remember that when Diamonds was like the talk of it. Yeah, I remember that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so our company had made this decision. We brought the Joe Core to it. The very first day of the conference, this young guy comes by and I see he's from De Beers. And I said, and he says, can I look over your core? I said, of course. He says, I want to take some notes. So I started talking to him about the chemicals in the indicator minerals and how, they were unique and they were, known to occur only in diamond mines. And we talked about the size of the indicator minerals, and he wrote copious notes over every millimeter of core. And then, like, for the next 4 days, we must have had 20 De Beers guys come by to look at that core, and they would talk amongst themselves and look at the core and talk. And
And they're whispering,
I'd tell them my shtick about the indicator minerals and
which you've got hammered down pat at that point, probably.
oh
Which is,
yeah,
it
oh
was a
yeah,
beauty.
because
Yep.
my mentor Bob Barnett had done all the mineral chemical work for the Diavik mine. So he sharpened my pencil on. We worked really close. He kind of took me under his wing. And so I had a great story to tell and great looking core. And all these De Beers guys came by. And, I was pretty excited. And then at the very end of the day, we're taking down our booth. It's all over. Along comes, because our geophysicist was Gennin McDowell, who was the world exploration manager for Anglo for during his career, and he knew all the De Beers guys. So Gannon and I were taking down the booth and we're talking, and the world exploration manager for the Diamond World Exploration Manager, the president of De Beers Canada, the president of the one of the top guys at De Beers in South Africa comes by and says, "So your core looks really good, Gannon. Why don't uh, why don't we pay for a 500-ton bulk sample and don't even bother drilling anymore? Let's just do a bulk sample and no strings attached. And if we like what we see, we'll make you an offer." And I'm floored because, I knew that's like $5 million worth of work.
Yeah, that's
And
crazy. That's a crazy commitment. Yeah, they really
just
like what
for
they saw.
no rights of first refusal, nothing, no stock,
Wow.
nothing. Just will do. Now, after that, the world ex those two key guys left the company. And De Beers, who had a bad reputation in diamonds, the conspiracy was, oh, they're just going to control everything and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Not only did their key guys that made the deal on a handshake leave, they honored it. They did.
Oh, De
They
Beers did.
Yes.
Fantastic.
And
With
so, there's some great stories like that. Look at Great Bear, for example. Everybody loves to talk about that success, but they don't really know where the success started from. I was a consultant to the company when they were just a shell, and it was literally a shell. Now I had been brought in because they also had a diamond company, so I had all this experience in diamonds, and they wanted me to help. And I also looked at Great Bear and I go, man, that's a clean shell. We should do something with that. So at the same time, I had spent about 10 years working with Bob Singh and our past friend, who's no longer with us, Scott Weeks. And we were kind of the three amigos of Red Star Gold, which is now Heliostar. And
uh
so, in between Scott passing away and Charles Funk taking over the company, Bob Singh wasn't happy because he's a classic rock guy. He loves his rocks. We have had, endless conversations about rocks. And he knows I know a lot of people. So he was calling me up because they put him in as the CEO, and he's not a CEO kind of guy at all. And they were putting lots of pressure on him at the time, and he wasn't happy. And he would call me up and say, Allan, I'm not happy. I said, Bob, you're a genius, man. Quit. You don't need that. And so he said, so one day he calls me up and he says, I did it. I said, what? He said, I quit. I said, I'm done. I had enough. I don't want to be a CEO. I just want to go back to my consulting. He says, do you know anybody that needs consulting work? And I said, well, Bob, I'm working on this diamond deal, and we also got a shell. I said, you should come and we need a QP for the diamonds. He said, I don't know anything about diamonds. I said, well, Bob, don't worry. I can bring you up to speed on the diamonds. I know a lot about diamonds. I got all these friends in diamonds. I said, but what we should do with the Great Bear is we should get you to go see Perry English, who's a one of those famous prospectors you talked about earlier.
Yeah. Yep.
I said,
Exactly.
and focused in Red Lake. And I
Mhm.
said, you're great friends with Perry. Go to Perry, look at all his projects, find the best one, and and let's put it into Great Bear and make Great Bear a Red Lake story. And he said, and so then my contract came up, and the company was in a tough financial position, and they had brought Bob in. It took me a few months to convince them that Bob was the guy, and so they couldn't keep me on. But the rest is history with Great Bear, and our industry is full of these kind of stories, and nobody's
Oh, it's
telling
wild.
them.
They're all in the background, right? We never talk about them.
We should
It's
be.
we should be talking about them 100%.
You,
100%.
how's your time? We got gold running today. I'm going to call it the Denis Laviolette effect. I'm going to
Jesus,
call
no,
you
don't
up.
call it that. That's fucking negative. 1 second here. Let me have a quick look. Yeah, I'm still good on time.
Okay, so
Yep.
gold's doing great. Let's talk about some deals that we both know a lot about. One
Sure.
of those is our friend Kelly Malcolm and Borealis Mining. You guys are an investor. I'm an investor. Rob McEwen's an investor. I brought him in to look at the story, and then he decided, we got to get rid of Waterton. Can you get me the whole position of Waterton? I said, well, let me talk to Kelly. So Kelly did his magic with Newmont, and I kind of did my magic with Rob McEwen, and now
The
that
rest is
was
his. I actually heard that. I heard that, Alan. I heard that
no.
that you did that too. That you brokered that little situation.
Well, we
And
got rid of the last of the dog hair on the dog by getting rid of Waterton.
well, yeah, and it was hair, and it was hair, and so I was in there. I want to say early because I saw it before they even did the deal with Waterton. So I think we put a check in at that stage, in part of that initial deal creation with the Waterton piece. And that was the hair. That was like, well, but you know who'd done it before though too, that was successful with dealing with them and who did okay with it all was Paycor with Christina McCarthy.
One
And
of
so
my
she's on the
sponsors and one of my picks.
yeah, exactly. So Chris is on the board there with Kelly, but yeah, she had dealt with that Waterton problem
I'll tell
and
you, I
and
think
managed it very well.
she may be the only one that dealt with that kind of issue, because a
I
lot of
know. I
the
think I think
other,
you're right.
everybody
I think you're
else,
right.
Waterton would just come in and blow out their stock and just relentlessly sell the stock. And
Yeah, I don't know
once
how
they
much she
hit,
managed to do it, but she managed to do it.
she did
She
a
had.
fantastic job. So
Mhm.
Kelly, around that same time, called me up and said, because Kelly and I had first met with Amex, I
Mhm.
started covering them on their first discovery hole. And
Which is awesome, by the way.
yeah, I think it's a I think it's a mine of the future that's going to be a monster. Now they're a sponsor of my shows, so I'm biased, but I've been biased long before they were ever a sponsor.
No, you're right. It is. It's going to be.
Yeah.
I love it. Victor and Wanda are fantastic, and the project is exceptional. I think it's very undervalued, in my opinion. I look at it. I went through it recently. I want to say what was it like last year, I was pleasantly surprised to go through it prior to them putting out the resource and that. I went through like the geological model of it, and I was looking at it, and I just couldn't believe like there's a much bigger macro picture there than
Well,
just that one. You know, it was like this
well,
massive, like sort
look
of
at it.
sigmoidal deformation zone,
You look
and that
at it and you say, well, there's like five zones like packed into an area of like a kilometer that are stuck between in a package of rocks that's got, you know, deep cracks around it.
yeah, and other zones and other showings on surface, like there's clearly other like dilation zones in that what appears to be a big sort of dilation zone, and
So
there's other
folks,
structures in there.
non-geologists, what dilation zones are is that when you get these cracks in the earth from these deep crustal cracks, faults, the rocks can, you know, kind of do this. They open up. And where they open up, you can get these great deposits. They're called dilation zones. And so,
Yeah, the way I like to do it is somebody showed me this a long time ago. It's kind of cool. So I'm going to try to point it at the camera. So you take your hands and you cup them like this, and this is like a fault, right? When we think about a fault, we think about a big crack, and it's super long. It's like, you know, you think of the earth being perfectly round, but we know when we zoom in, it's actually pretty bumpy, right?
yeah.
Well, a fault is the same way. We think of like a big sheet of paper, like a big, it's been sliced beautifully by a saw and it's moving and grinding, but in fact, it's all undulating. And what happens is if you take your hands and you sort of move them like this, and against each other, you get this space that opens up,
Ah, there
right?
you
So that's
go.
like two faults moving against each other and opening up space, right? And so that's like a
And then
dilation
the
zone.
fluids with the gold in them
Like,
can make their way into those
yeah,
spaces.
they like that space. That's
Yeah.
where they like to hang out. That's the path of least resistance for those suckers. So they go
So
right in there.
Kelly and I have known each other for several years. So he calls me up. He says, "Well, I'm on my own. I got my own deal. I got my sort of my life in front of me and my fate in my own hands. And here's the project." And so he tells me about it, and I go, "Wow, that sounds real good." And so then he sends me some scientific papers, and first thing I read is that they write about, oh, this is a Yanacocha lookalike at Borealis Mine. And okay, so whenever I hear that, the first thing I do is I use my favorite exploration tool, which is Google Earth. I go on Google Earth, I punch in Yanacocha because I knew about it. It is South America's greatest gold mine. So I go look, and wow, there's an alteration zone there, and pits everywhere. And so I did the calculation of the dimensions, and I go back up to Borealis Mine. And sure enough, there's this huge alteration package, and some small pits, one big one, and I kind of put the dimensions of Yanacocha in there, and I go, holy shit, this thing has the same kind of dimensions. Then I look at it and I go, oh, damn, there's cross-cutting faults going right through the alteration and heading out into the covered area. And I look at the best pit they had, and it's out in the covered area right beside one of these faults. And
Yeah,
I go,
yeah.
holy moly, there could be two Yanacochas in here. And so got really stoked, and I started working with Kelly well before it went public, and and we told the story to Rob, and he loved it. And so I think Kelly's got a great story that is kind of under a lot of people's radars, but it sure as heck isn't under my radar or Rob's.
No, or mine. It's actually it's a very incredible story. The from what I think what sold me on it, not necessarily the Yanacocha comp, but I'll take it. I think that's a fantastic comp. The and interesting to hear your perspectives on that. But what I think sold me on it was just looking at the sheer scale of the land package. The I was aware of the tumultuous history of like the mining, and how the prior operators, there was all the litigious, ins and outs with that.
That kind of
But
got me more excited, to tell you the truth, Denny, because I love these kind of stories of how
oh yeah, the documentary about how like they got fucked and it was like this happened and they were, shipping off graph anyway. So I'm looking at this thing and I remember Kelly. So Kelly came in and we were looking at the maps and some of the models. And what shocked me was the sheer size of the property package. So it is very much a district scale property.
Yep.
And then all of this attention was put, which is so classic. You find a zone and then you're under the market pressures. And so you pin cushion the shit out of that zone and you kind of ignore the bigger picture. And then you're advancing it into production. And next thing you know, you're producing on this zone and you're struggling to, make profit. And all of a sudden, everything is about your cash flow and everything else. So how could you possibly give any attention to anything else? So when I'm looking at it with Kelly, I see that main sort of pit and zone, and then we looked at the sulfide values underneath it, and that's where I saw like those big flashy, like there was whatever 9 meters of. I'm making this up for the listener,
Right,
like
but literally right beside that pit, that Freedom
yeah, there's like
Flats
9 meters at 25 grams, and
Oh,
16
even
meters
yeah,
at like there's like big, insane hits. And then, well, it's sulfide and it's, potentially snarly. And it's like you're in Nevada. There's autoclaves like right there. Like,
roasters.
yeah, like what long, not Long Canyon, Lone Tree has a
Yep,
fucking autoclave. I'm pretty
yep,
sure.
it is.
Fact check
Yeah,
me
I
if
know the
I'm
story well
wrong.
because it's Amex or it's I-80, and Ewan Downey's a good buddy of mine.
Oh, okay, there you go. So yeah, so there's that there. And then I'm looking at that, and then there's all these other like big alteration zones with good geochemistry, and as you said, the structure going from cover to uncover, and all of these other zones, and they're like pretty much unexplored.
Yeah,
And I was
totally.
going, dude, this is an exploration
That's
story.
a
Please tell
20
me you're not going to be a
mile.
mining story.
That's a 20-mile alteration zone,
It's
man.
huge. It's huge. And I go, and please tell me you're going to stay focused on like turn this back into exploration for a while. And it's like, well, yeah, but you're inheriting the cash flow and still pouring gold. So I was okay, well, obviously, and now he's consolidating a bit too. So, which is cool. But I really hope, I think for the value for the shareholder to really appreciate what that's all about. It's for me, it's all about size and it's all about discovery. There's so much more to discover on that property.
He's got
And these
a
grades are phenomenal.
he's got almost an empty canvas with lots of really, like, you even look at the pits, and you go and you look at the pits, and on the sides of the pits there's alteration there, beautiful alteration. It looks
Yeah.
just like the big 20-mile alteration package. You got 20 square mile alteration package. It's an explorer's dream. Plus, you got the benefit. Hey, we can mine some of these, make some money. Like, his business plan is something that most explorers don't have.
Well, and the other thing we have to take note of with that deal is the timing of things as they've played out in Nevada. And so you've had Newcrest come into the North American landscape from Australia, now combined with Newmont, which we've all seen. But what many people don't know is prior to the Newmont deal, Newcrest decided to plant a flag in what is that district called?
Ah.
I'm drawing the blank.
With that company,
In Kelly, like the trend that Kelly's in right now.
yes,
It's not Battle Mountain, it's not
Walker Lane.
Cortez, it's Walker Lane. Thank you.
Yep.
And so yeah, so they planted a flag in Walker Lane, which the big boys have ignored, right?
Well,
Walker Lane
not
was always
totally.
discounted for like this, that, small,
Not
high
totally,
grade.
because Anglo has made that Merlin and
Oh, true. Yep.
silicon discovery. That's, in a day when it's hard to find oxide deposits in Nevada, there it looks like a 10, 20 million ounce monster.
But Walker Lane classically through 1978 through
Oh,
to 2014,
pretty much ignored.
Walker Lane was like never got the love, and it was a patchwork of smaller companies and trying to make a thing, and really, you know, it's what do you call that? Like a misnomer, a geological
Yeah,
dogma. There's like a
outlier or
dogma,
something. Yeah.
yeah, a dogma that misplaces it, and so now like you're saying, with Anglo and then Newcrest and now Newmont and
Yeah.
stuff. So Kelly's timing on entering the Walker Lane and creating getting a big toehold into that, it's brilliant. And so for me, that's a stock. You buy it, you put it in another mattress, and you forget about it because it's going to be
Well, I
awesome again.
have, and I'm not forgetting about it. I'm pounding the table on it. I think they got a great story. Another one that we talked about before we went on camera, Denny, is I'm a pretty happy camper today because yesterday I had been working hard on Goliath and McEwen Mining, kind of McEwen Mining, looking at doing a strategic investment into Goliath. And it was consummated as of yesterday. Unfortunately, Goliath kind of got hammered, and I was thinking, what the hell's going on here? This is great. And McEwen actually was did quite well on the news, and uh, today we got gold up $52, and Goliath is screaming, and McEwen is outperforming their peers. And you said you had looked at the Goliath project. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, yeah. I was saying to you off camera. I've been very familiar with Goliath early, so like even before it was sort of an official thing. I want to say probably going back to 2014. It
Yep.
was probably maybe 2015. I remember when they came in with samples and they were rappelling down the side of the like, and they would just grab samples
Yeah, the
and
Jones
a
stuff, man.
story. Yeah, and I was like, holy fuck, this is like, whoa. And I was actually working with Sheldon, and it wasn't something at that time in the market that we had the capital or the gusto to take on or make an investment in.
Yeah.
But it stuck with me, and it was one of those like, I don't know about you, but when I see projects sometimes, like, alarm bells go off sometimes, like, and not
Actually,
not in
I
a bad
call it
way, like
my
like
my goosebump indicator.
yeah, like a spidey sense, like you
Yeah,
just go,
like I
holy
hear
shit,
a
like this one's
story, and
real.
all of a sudden I literally get goosebumps. I don't do
Yeah,
it doesn't happen often, but it does happen.
it happens, and sometimes I ignore it, and I go, well, I'll put that on my watch list, and I've been punished for every single one of those instances
I
by not
never, I
participating.
never ignore the goosebump
Oh,
indicator.
see, well, you know,
Never.
in fairness, I also was broke for a very long time, so it
Okay.
wasn't like I could do anything about it. Like even if I wanted to. So all my marbles were tied up in other things, right? So
Yeah.
um, yeah. So again, not going to ignore the goosebumps ever again. But Goliath was one of those goosebump stories, and I remember like as it unfolded, it only got better and better, and then Quentin started to follow it, and he was quite close to it, and then it started to get better. I'm buddies with Quentin, and then and so on and so forth, and it just kind of kept going down the chain, and then I kept constantly being impressed by what was going on. Tony, Hollywood Tony, I was just telling you, from LA, who was a big helper with us
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah,
basically
yeah.
the main guy that does the videos for Newfound Gold on YouTube.
Okay.
So Tony also was working with Goliath for a bit there too, doing some stuff, and he was showing me some of the footage and the cast of characters and all of that, which I think is just phenomenal. I think
You
that
know,
like
you
now
you
I've got a
just
bit more insight.
you just touched on something that is one of the great lessons that I learned from my geology mentor in geology. He's no longer with us. Bob Darney is his name. I call it the Darney trend. Bob Darney trend. And he said to me, Alan, every project starts out big. It's got this big geochemical anomaly. It's got this big geophysical anomaly. And you know what happens? He says, you drill it, and most of them, they get smaller and smaller and smaller. He said, but mines are different. He says, the more science and the more drilling you throw at them, the
They get
better and
bigger.
better they get.
Oh shit, that's a very profound.
And you just
It's
said
true,
it.
eh?
And the other thing he said is you also get pleasant surprises along the way. And Goliath just got a recent pleasant surprise with a 10-meter intersection of 132.9 grams.
I saw
And,
that. I saw that. Yeah.
and
Same.
people think of exploration and, they think of all these complicated, but there was a guy who spent 40 years in his career, watched everything. He, in fact, ran the largest geological consulting firm in Vancouver back because of the SK Creek mining days. And so he's seen it all. And
You're
that's what he
totally
came.
right. Holy fuck, you're totally right. Or this guy, like, yeah, what a lesson. You're right.
You know?
Mines get bigger when you keep throwing money at them.
Yep.
And
Bigger and
and a
better.
lot of things get smaller. Yeah, you're right.
And then you
Totally.
get these
Good way to
pleasant
look at it.
surprises. And
Yeah.
that's sort of what
Newfound's like that too.
I was just going to say. You
Yeah, you
know,
throw, yeah.
I look at Newfound and I'll tell you, Kelly, what I see, Abitibi 2.0.
It's a big system, and even Newfound, the market, there's no way I'm not caught like this isn't like I'm not telling people that they're dumb or whatever. It's not anything like that. It's the market has this way of just being so myopic, or like
Yes.
as time goes on, they get so myopic and they look at like, well, Keats, and it's like, dude, there's 130 kilometers of a big ass fucking crack, and there's gold everywhere. There's
Everywhere.
gold, like, you know how many possible deposits could exist? I'm not saying they do. I'm just saying, the potential, just the sheer statistical potential of that. The fact that we've drilled 150,000 meters. I see a lot of people get bent out of shape about the amount of drilling or sorry, 400,000 meters. You get bent out of shape about 400,000 meters. It's like, look at this footprint of ground that's covering and down to what depth.
And when you're
It's
getting
nothing.
joy with it, you're looking for thin, steeply dipping veins, like
Totally.
at
And they're actually not that thin in the end of the day.
actually that's true. And you look at
You know?
Fosterville, you look at Red Lake. Both were failing mines for 20 years. They went deeper, they found the jewelry boxes, they were legends.
There's
And
jewelry boxes on this sucker that come straight to surface. Look at Keats, Iceberg, like a lot of
everywhere,
there's
everywhere.
and then there's all the in between stuff. It's like a big bunch of spider webs, and then you got all these like blowouts in there too. And so, like, is it all the same? No, it's not all the same. Does it all, dude? I'm telling you, if you really get your pencil out and you go and look through all of those veins, you look through those long sections, you look through the holes,
I
the
have,
sheer volume, you go, oh my God. The letdowns, like even a press release, you'll see the headlines, right? We'll put out Newfound puts out headlines. Go read the other ones.
yep,
Forget
yep,
about the headline holes. Forget
yep.
about the headline. Read the
Look
other
at
ones.
everything.
Yeah, look at everything. Go look at
Visible
those.
gold everywhere. Look at the drill core. Visible
Yeah.
gold everywhere.
Yeah. Well, you'll see 2.5 meters of 5, 1.5 meters of 9. Like the fucking the B side on Newfound Gold's drilling is spectacular. And
Another
so
thing that I
it's
don't,
to me, it just, the haters want to hate, but at the end of the day, it's a massive system. And
huge,
I bet your ass I'll be long dead.
and there will
And
still be
eh,
mines there.
oh, for sure. In that area, for
You
sure.
know, Part of the reason for that, Denny, is that people don't really understand how gold, this is another mentor message for me that I got. He always said, look at how the gold is distributed in the core and how this is another Bob Darnyism, and look at how they are in relation to each other. And
Mm.
so when you look at an orogenic gold system, what people don't understand is you can drill a little drill hole through an orogenic gold vein, and here you got 2 grams. You could go 2 meters over and you got 150 grams. That's the way I
They're nuggety by nature. They're nuggety
absolutely.
systems there's not one out there in the world that's not nuggety. They're all
Nope.
nuggety. There's not
Absolutely.
one single one that's not nuggety.
Absolutely. One of the cool work that you guys that was recently done, I love the trenching because now you get to walk and see what is happening at surface, but how that can happen at depth. For example, you can have pinching and swelling along strike of
Sure.
those. You can have one that's displaced slightly from another. Now imagine, Denny, you got a vein here.
That
It's
was
just
surprising, by the way. That was surprising to us, by the way.
of course.
The like the slight like meter, half meter kind of jogs and chopped up kind of bits in
So
there.
now what happens, Denny, if you drill here, you
Mhm.
drill here, and you drill here? This looks great, that looks great, that looks like nothing. But a meter over, and you're
It's
back into
awesome.
grade. And you can see that right at the surface. You walk on it.
Well, the other thing that's interesting about that is if you look at the geological modeling, right,
Yep.
that the company had put out in many videos and things in geological modeling predicting the ore and where it would be situating at surface. Because of course, when you're drilling, you're drilling at depth, right? And you sort of you can't see anything at surface there. It's all covered, right? So remember, this is all covered. You don't see shit. And then
Nothing.
you got this vein system and you're drilling it, but there's this wedge that you just don't know what it is exactly, but you're pretty sure because you've drilled it for, a couple hundred meters down and you know where it's kind of going and you can project it back upwards. And so when we scraped the top off her and got in there and looked at it for the first time, right? You've got your main vein sets, right? So when you look at the geological modeling at Newfound Gold, there's all the main sort of juiciest vein sets, these sort of more prominent controlling structures are encapsulated in those structures, right? In those
Yep.
models.
Yep.
And what you'll notice is that when you look at where it comes to surface and all that, there's so much ancillary mineralization. So not just like the main principal structure, principal vein, there's
Yep.
all these stringer zones and fucking all this other stuff. And when you look at the channel sample numbers, right? Because we channeled the snot out of it, like every 7.5 meters or so, there's a channel sample.
Okay.
Basically, all the way across, every single thing is sampled and reported. And you'll see just the sheer distribution of mineralization ancillary to the main sort of principal structure. So it's like, well, what do you want to do? I mean, clearly, if you're at depth, are you going to go after all that ancillary stuff? Probably not. But at surface, are you going to? Well, maybe you will. So there's a whole bunch of different scenarios you got to kind of consider when you think about evaluating these types of systems. They're not porphyries. And
No.
everybody loves evaluating a porphyry deposit. It's super simple, it's homogeneous, et cetera, et cetera. They can step out 150 meters and drill it twice and be like, well, there's 200 meters of that. And every sample, and things like nugget, right? So this kind of pisses me off too, because as a geo, so you'll get guys from Nevada, right? And I can think of a couple guys that are kind of prominent in the
Yeah.
industry that promote themselves as expert geologists.
Yeah.
And, they know one group of rocks in one part of the world, and that's about it. And they don't really
Gotcha.
know it that well.
Yep.
And so they'll come out and say, well, you really got, and sometimes they even invent calculators, right? Where you could strip out like the ore and the waste and the dilution and the
Yeah.
smearing calculators, right?
Yeah.
So smearing calculators are incredibly important in porphyry systems, and they're incredibly important in low grade,
Yeah.
widespread
Big.
mineralization
But
because
they're
it's
actually kind of useless when you're looking at an ore because
in
literally
orogenic, they're useless.
you
They're
could
pretty much useless.
literally get 2 grams here, 10 meters over and 10 meters down. You got 250 grams.
Well, put it
I-
this way. If you're mining a vein, when you're modeling a vein, right, you're going from hanging wall to footwall contact. If the vein's 2.5 meters wide, you're mining, like you're not going to go underground that day and go, hey guys, shave off the left foot and a half of that vein. It was shitty in the drill
The
hole
drill core.
that passed through 30 meters in front of us. Like no one's going to do that. You take the whole vein. That's what
Yeah.
you're doing. And so, like, if you sample the vein and you break it up into three samples, and two of them are awesome and one of them shit,
Yeah.
you're still taking the whole vein. So you're
Absolutely.
smearing. Smearing's the name of the
And
game.
even you might even take what's beside it. Like you got 280 grams over a half a meter.
Yeah.
You can go out to 2.5 meters easily, take it all. You still got what, an ounce, 2 ounces?
Well, yeah, and exactly. Notwithstanding that, as to your point, the vein's usually dipping at some angle. You're probably running it corner to corner in your face underground, right? And then
Yeah,
you've got a pocket of dilution on either opposing corner, right? That's not
yep,
vein.
yep,
And so you're either that's good material or it's not, whatever. It's going to the mill,
yep,
right?
yep,
And so, but when you think about like a big bulk tonnage deposit, if you're drilling 200 meters of 0.5 grams per ton,
yeah,
the project costs $1 billion in capex to put
yeah,
into production. It's going to have razor thin margins,
yeah,
right?
nothing.
Payback is like fucking 7 years. IRR is like 12%,
Yeah,
right? IKN guy probably loves it, right? These types of people.
yeah,
Then all of a sudden you get you go and you look at that, you stick in one sample, okay?
yep,
That's like 100 grams per ton. That's going to throw the whole thing off kilter. So there's an example where smearing, there's an example where nugget and smearing matters a lot. So it's
yeah.
not very good. You don't want high nugget in a deposit like that, and you don't want smearing.
Right,
Clear.
right.
So they're absolutely right.
Because
These
you're
people.
just, it's a rock moving, you're doing 30,000 tons a day. You want
It's
to be
Tonka
able,
trucks in a sandbox.
I want to go here, and then over here, I want this. And you want
100, and it's
predictability.
you want predictability, you want consistency. Your margins are razor thin. You can't go having jewelry boxes and that stuff that pay the bills, right?
No,
You're moving way too much rock
yeah,
and you're milling way too much rock. Your mills are like 10, 20,000, like they're massive mills,
they're
1,000
not
tons a
made
day.
for it.
Like they're insane, right? There's
Yeah,
not like what you see in organic gold, like a Red Lake or anywhere. Like Red Lake's a mega mill compared to many of them. What's that? A few thousand tons?
yeah,
So
well,
like
that jewelry box down there turned them from a 50,000 ounce producer to a 500,000 ounce producer.
I mind it. I
Yeah.
mind it. I
No
worked at
way.
Dickens. Yeah, I worked at Dickinson, high grade zone.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah, and so it was crazy. I was with Macassa too for a long time.
Well,
So at Dickinson, I remember plowing through just the attack to get into that high grade zone.
yeah,
We were doing 10-foot rounds with twin two boom jumbos, so 12-foot wide, right, by 12-foot high,
yeah.
10-foot deep. So mega rounds, and we'd be blasting, I don't know, probably 10, 12 rounds of maybe more, maybe 25. Like it was like a lot. So it'd be like a bit like maybe like 100 meters approach. So it was like 300 feet
Yep.
approach, right? That's the attack. And you get 2 rounds of ore.
Holy.
So you go through dead rock,
Two
right?
round. Yeah.
Drive a tunnel, dead
Yeah.
rock to this massive chute that's plunging,
Yeah.
right? You blast out this basically
And it's worth like $10,000 a ton rock.
it's unbelievable stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like unbelievable godlike. There's Fiji like you've never seen, right?
Yeah.
Boom. Okay. Well,
Literally,
unless you've
folks.
been to Newfound Gold, then you've seen similar stuff. And then, bang, you blast that out. And then basically they would paste fill it, do the whole thing again, come underneath the paste and do it again.
That's
It was
really
undercut and
cool.
fill. Yeah.
You you've
And so you get
seen
3 rounds of ore for like 2 weeks of fucking waste for
you've
like 2 days of
seen
ore.
orogenic gold systems from a conceptual model, walking on them, staking them, drilling them, and mining them. So
Oh,
you've
I mined them. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
you've
I got
seen.
I've spent probably 10 years of my life in high grade organic gold production.
I'll tell
Like,
you
forget
what.
about like the exploration.
I'll tell you what, Denny. At the end of the day, I look at this and I go, what would happen if I was able to go 120 years backwards to the Abitibi? And that's where I think you are in Newfoundland.
Yeah, it's a similar type of a spot, and it's funny if you go back 100 years, which obviously there's a lot of apples and oranges, but if you go back 100 years to the Abitibi, you'll see things. And I mean, I said this on the message board the other day. Um, the Caratazin mine, you go out there, like, you think that they drilled the piss out of the Caratazin to, a depth of a kilometer,
Oh,
from the start before they
they
decided to
tasted,
go and get
folks.
their debt funding and get their production in order? No, they drilled like 300,000 ounces. Okay, good enough. Let's get started.
Let's
And
drill for
then,
another 300.
yeah, then 12 million ounces later, right?
Yep.
Hecla, famously, Hecla in the silver business is renowned for this. I
Yep.
mean, high grade, orogenic, or narrow vein, whatever you want to call it, right? You pick your poison. It's a
Yep.
different beast.
Totally.
The approach is different. If you're Sean Rusin, who I had on the pod,
Yep.
and I talked to Sean
Cool dude, man. I
semi
love
often, I
Sean.
love Sean. He's awesome,
Yep.
super knowledgeable. Windfall Lake, there's a comparative, but Windfall got the best pretty deep, right? So you had to go down reasonably deep.
Yep.
And because of his location, he's in the middle of nowhere. It was in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
You had to drill 1.5 meters into that thing. You had to show not only how deep it can go and how much is there, you had to quantify it as much as possible to justify
A
the capital
billion.
expenditure
Yeah.
required to build it,
Yeah.
right?
$1 billion or something. Yeah.
Like you had to really de-risk it, and that's a real orphan thing. That's a real, like, oddball setting.
Yeah.
As compared to Newfound, you're right beside the highway, power, Gander.
Gander.
You
Everything's
really need
right
to go
there. It's
crazy.
awesome. Um,
Yeah.
Denny, I could talk to you for hours, literally, my man.
Likewise, Alan.
And you've
It's been
been
a treat.
super great with your time. Can we quickly go through some of what, like, you got Crash Labs, you're advocating for the industry, you got Earth Labs, you spent time in AI, you're doing a lot of awesome stuff, Kelly, or I mean, Denny. We gotta do this again, man, or something.
We definitely have to. I've got a meeting coming up that I'm going to be
Okay.
late for. But I honestly, Alan, I really, really appreciate it, and I appreciate everything you do for the industry. We'll have to get you on Crash Labs and then talk again. That'll be a
I'm
good
gonna
reason
be
to
at the
talk. Keep,
PDAC,
keep
so
the conversation going.
I'll be at the PDAC, so
Okay,
I'm
man.
I'll be up in Toronto.
Awesome. Sounds good. All
All
right.
right,
Well, thank you
man.
very much. Take care.
Thanks, Denny. There you go,
Thanks.
folks. I loved having this conversation with Denis Laviolette. Really smart guy, doing a lot of great things, some great stories. Love that he's advocating for the industry, thinking about it differently, like we talked about early in the conversation, utilizing digital marketing. He's a really cool cat. And I'm looking forward to maybe getting on Crash Labs and having Denny on again because I could literally talk to Denny for hours. As always, do your homework, speak with your financial advisor, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.